Finally got my backhoe done. Made it out of a 95 Suzuki Sidekick. The motor was fine. I used it in a different Suzuki. The body was, well, it was sold originally in Minnesota, so you understand what happened to the body of it. This is what I made out of the frame. Just like to show you what I did, just in case anybody else is thinking about a cheap alternative or a cheap alternative to a $20,000 backhoe in some cases. Made this for about 2,500 bucks. A lot of the tube I got for free. I went a little overboard on the cylinders, but it's all I had and they were free. I had them basically laying on a shelf. Got all my pins greasable. And these, let me get around here so the sun ain't blinding you. These pins up at the top up here are just cast iron pillows with 1-inch bearings and 1-inch pins. I was wondering originally, zoom in here, if they were going to break with the extreme pressure forced on them by the hydraulic cylinders, but they seem to be holding up just fine. I've used it quite a bit. As I said, all the pins are greasable. I just drilled them in and counter drilled them where the little hardened steel or hardened bushing is there, so the grease will come out exactly where it belongs. Bent some straps to reinforce the cast iron bearing pillows there. Took me about, I suppose a year and a half to do this. Of course, I was working most of the time. This is 4x4 tube. I believe it's 3/16 inch thick. And then I just had some 3x3 on the inside, and I capped it with some straps to make up the difference, and welded everything together and slid it right in. Works great. As I said, this is a Suzuki to begin with. So I had a 4x4 chassis to start with, and I just put on everything to make it into a backhoe. Bought a couple of valve bodies and made a seat out of an old car rim. Steering wheel, the e-brake is out of it. I got a 5-speed manual in here with high and low range 2-wheel, 4-wheel. An old farmhand hydraulic tank off an old tractor I got for 20 bucks. Some old tractor weights because the hind end gets a little bit heavy. I just welded a piece of pipe in there. Got all kinds of these U-bolts from my work. Those things work absolutely incredible for pedals, hangers, you name it. As you can see, I got one here for a tie down as I put it on the back of my 1-ton, tie it down and transport it wherever I need to go. Made myself a handbrake or a hand throttle. Got a free oil filter housing over there. And as you can see, I couldn't get a fitting for it, so I drilled it out, re-tapped it, and made a fitting, because there's really no pressure on it. It's just a return line. Had to make a hydraulic pump bracket. I got a secondary pulley on here. I was going to put an alternator on here and wire in a voltage regulator so I could use it after dark, because you know, nighttime is the right time for criminal activities. And I even got the brake master cylinder down here and piped everything in to my brake pedal there. It's a little snug, but everything works quite well. An old tractor seat. And if you're wondering where I got all this is just half-inch water line. Works great. Very cheap alternative to structural steel, because that stuff is major expensive. And these just slide up and down with the cylinder. I got some grease zerks here on all four sides. I got a U-bolt there to hold the tractor weights on, because this thing really doesn't want to dig very well without any extra weights. I just welded a bolt on top for holding it on so nothing falls off. And gravity holds everything where it belongs. Most of the steel I got for free, like I said, from my work. The four-wheel drive chassis was already there. If I had anything to do different on this, because I have 4-inch cylinders, it takes a lot to fill them. Of course, it makes for a lot of extra strength for digging in the dirt, but it's also very slow. And this hydraulic pump is an 18 gallon a minute, if I'm remembering right. And the motor is a 13 horse. If I had it all over to do again, I would have put a 21 gallon a minute pump on with the same motor size. My clutch, as you can see, get over here in the operator's seat. There's a pedal just down here. Another U-bolt. It's just an over-center pulley for a clutch. Works very well. About 60 pounds on those two clutch springs. Like I said, just wanting to, if anybody else is out there looking for a cheap alternative to a $20,000 backhoe, if you got a little bit of ingenuity and some scrap steel laying around, you can make yourself a nice, well, let's just face the facts, a cobbled together piece of junk, but at least it digs. My clutch bearing out the front is just my splines off of my old clutch disc welded in the center of a big pulley. And I do believe this pulley is a, oh gosh. If anybody's curious, I can throw a tape measure to it and leave a comment, as I don't really know. But the front end is supported with a bearing, of course, because you don't want your, if I can get it to focus down there. And that's a metric bearing, I do believe. But I had to shim it with a pop can. And I got some railroad spikes to keep the belt from popping off, because it kept wanting to pop off every time I come out of the groove, every time I push the clutch in. No trains crashed yet, so I'm thinking it probably wasn't necessary for those spikes to be there. The original steering column shaft for the Suzuki, and I just cut it off right here, welded in an extra length of 1/2 inch water line. Supply hose I got for free. I just left that stuff on there for now just because it plugs up all the hoses and I don't want grit and gravel getting in the steering sector. Because I don't know, because I have a 95 Suzuki Sidekick already that I put the motor from this in, and I don't want to wreck the steering sector or any of the hoses or anything like that just in case I need parts. And it's not like this thing is going 70, 80 miles an hour, so I don't need that perfect of steering. She's a babe magnet. Well, it beats a shovel. Let's just put it that way. Let's see if I can fire it up here. Set the hand throttle. There's something I don't like about this. About halfway. I don't like how this motor is. If it lugs at all, it wants to die. I don't know if it's just the cheap brand, but you know, everything's cheap nowadays. You can't find anything with any type of quality. And if I had this over to do again and I was sort of struggling for money at the time, who isn't, I would have bought one that had an electric starter on it, just for ease, and I would have just mounted the switch back there by the steering column. But hindsight is always 20/20. Sets a choke. Ooh, I think I flooded it. Oh, I already had it on.